Hello everyone, this is YouTube 31 Pockets, and I'd like to invite everyone to my episode on the quick repair of a Toro CCR Powerlite. So let's get started. Okay, now here's our Toro CCR Powerlite, and this is one of my favorite snowblowers to work on. It's very service friendly, and it's a very nice machine to operate. So today this one belongs to one of my neighbors, and he brought it down and said, told me that it was having a little bit of problems, and he was having problems with starting it. As we can see, it is missing the primer bulb where the white round circle is. There should be a rubber primer that goes over the top of that. So we picked up a new primer to install on here, and other than that, you know, to get started, we're going to pull the lower cover. Flip it up for you so you can see it. It's got two screws on the back end that drop and release this back cover so we can get access to the carburation. And since we don't know the history on this, what we're going to do is, after we pull the cover, we're going to shoot a little bit of carb cleaner inside the carburetor to see if it'll start up and stall out. So that's Alright, now we got the engine to start, so we're going to start on checking everything over. The first thing we're going to do is remove all the fuel out of the system by disconnecting where it goes into the carburetor at this point, and then we're going to undo the bottom of the carburetor. And now on this particular carburetor, it's preset from the factory to operate, and the bottom nut that holds the bowl on is a pre-fixed main jet. It has a hole, a wire drilled hole at the base that allows the proper mixture to go in and operate the engine through the speeds and what it does. So the first thing we're going to do is check on that stuff right now. Now we're going to remove our gas line clamp as it enters the carburetor and slide back our gas line. Now we're going to let the gas drain out of the complete system. Once the gas is out of the gas tank, then we're going to blast it out with high pressure with the air compressor and a blowgun. Now that we got all the fuel out of the gas tank, we're going to crack the bottom of the nut that holds the bowl on the bottom of the carburetor. Now we're going to use a half-inch box end wrench to undo that, and we're not going to take it off all the way. We're just going to crack it loose and let the remaining little bit of gas fall out through the bottom of the carburetor. Now that we have the fuel out of the bottom of the carburetor, we're going to roll the machine up, and we're going to be very careful to remove this nut on the bottom of the carburetor. We don't want to disturb the float system that's inside here. So we're going to slowly take this out. Now if we have it the normal way it normally sits on the ground, it will cause the float to fall down and sometimes go out of sync, and we don't want that to happen, so we're going to be very careful to remove this. Now as we can see in the bottom of the carburetor, there's a little bit of gluck down in there. That's enough right there to screw up the engine. Now I'm going to zoom in. This is the nut Now this little nut that holds the bowl on the bottom of the carburetor has to be one of the single most important things to keep clean and clear on this little Toro snowblower. Now the other thing that corresponds with this is the governor control system. This thing is prefixed from the factory to make it run the way it does versus the older machines where they had adjustments to set the mixture. This thing is prefixed and it gets rid of a lot of the problems. Now I'm going to take a couple high definition photos so you guys can see this a little bit clearer. And the next thing we're going to do is show you the governor system on the engine. Okay, now we're going to get started with the governor system to show you how that works. And we have another sample engine here that's out of a Powerlite laying on the floor. Now we can see the governor control. Let me zoom in a little bit, see if we can get a better shot. Now the way that this works is there's a spring right here that pulls the throttle to wide open position. Now there's a linkage arm on the throttle that also is connected to this little wing, or like kind of like an air door. As the fan rotates and the engine starts going too fast, if you look at the top of the throttle, when it starts blowing on this little wing here, it makes the throttle slow back down again. Now the other spring returns it back to full speed, the spring that you see on the other piece of the throttle butterfly. So what happens is sometimes if you're in the snow, the engine will bog down and it will allow this to fall down and the throttle to go wide open. Now when you come out of the snow, the engine will start to twirl too fast, and then this will rise up, and once in a while you hear the engine pulsating, and this is basically what it's doing. It's like a little brain for this engine to tell it when to create power and when to back down. So that's basically how that part works. Now this nut, if this is not clear and doesn't allow the fuel to go into the carburetor and pass through the engine properly, this whole system will fail and you'll have problems. It won't run right. So these two things together, this nut has to be kept clean and clear, and the mechanisms and controls on this governor have to operate smoothly like they are on this engine here. Now this Tecumseh Snow King engine is probably one of my favorite engines to work on. It's fairly simple. It has electronic ignition as we see here, and it's got reed valves that relieve the pressure as you pull the starter. It makes it easier to start than some of the older models had. So this one also has a ball bearing inside on the opposite side of the crankcase that stabilizes the crankshaft to handle the thrust and the shaking that these little engines go through. So this is a really nice, well-made, engineered engine. It's definitely one of my favorites to work on. Now to make sure this nut is clear, we're going to take our tip cleaning kit for our acetylene torches, and we have different size wire files that we can poke through these holes to make sure they're clear. So typically this is the smaller one that goes through, so we're going to poke it through and clean it. Now that one's clear, and we can go to the next size up to clean out the main hole underneath the bottom. So we'll clear it out that way. Now that we can see it's clear, we're going to hit it with a little bit of carb cleaner. Okay, now that we've cleaned up our bowl and our carburetor, we're going to reinstall our main jet nut with a brand new gasket and carefully put it back together. We always want to keep this piece here lined up with where the float connects. So I'm going to take the camera and come in a little closer. That lines up right there at that point, so you can see it, this little lip. So we're going to put that back on. And then insert the nut.